Hey everybody. Um, I want to share with you something really exciting that happened today. I was shopping at a secondhand store here locally and I found a treasure. I found an actual treasure. So this is something that I've actually dreamed of finding for many, many years. And every time I go to the secondhand stores, I always keep my eye out to see if perhaps this is something that I'm going to find. So let me show you what I found. This is an authentic pot. It would be considered a southwestern uh, from the traditions of we would say the American Southwest, but that also includes parts of northern Mexico. But this does not fall into the traditions that we would normally say are Mexican pottery traditions. It's much more closely related to the styles that we see in the American Southwest. Look at this. That is a rattlesnake. There's the rattles, and then it coils on up to the top. And there it is, with its mouth open even. Now, all of these styles here, all of these patterns that are on here, um, this is what we call black on black pottery, which basically what they do is they create the pot, and the pot is undecorated, and then they take a smooth stone, and with that smooth stone, they burnish the entire pot, and that's what gives it this really wonderful shine that you have on it. That's all created by rubbing with smooth stones. There's no glaze on this pot. So normally we're used to seeing pottery that's nice and shiny because it has a glaze applied to it. There's no glaze on this. This is all polished with smooth stones. Once the polish is done, then they'll take a tool and they will etch into that polished surface these designs. And so every one of these intricate designs that you see are literally where they scraped away that polished surface and left a matte surface, a matte texture, rather than the glossy polished texture. These patterns that we have here, these patterns are very typical of the Mimbres culture from, I believe the Mimbres culture was in southeastern Arizona and southern New Mexico. I'm not exactly sure on that, but the town that this comes from is these styles that they replicate. They tend to use Mimbres patterns, which, and by the way, so some of the history. This town, the town that this comes from, is in northern Mexico, about 100 miles south of the border. Now, this is a modern made, somewhat modern made pot. This is probably made in the last quarter of the 20th century. So, that's saying 1975 to 2000, somewhere in that area. So this was a modern creation. This is not an ancient pot, but this is a highly collectible pot. Um, and the author, let me look at the name again. There is a signature on the bottom. You can see that there. So they sign their name in it. It's Rito Talavera Quesada. So I looked up Rito and online, or I guess if you want me to say more clearly in English, Rito Talavera Quesada. That sounds horrible to me, but that's how it would be pronounced by English speakers. So if you want to look at Rito, Rito, Talavera, Talavera, and Quesada, Quezada. So he's the artist who made this, and he's known for making pots that have rattlesnakes, turtles, and I think frog is the other creature that he also uses on a lot of his pots. His father-in-law, when his father-in-law was young, he would play out in the desert, and there were some ruins nearby, and he would go and explore these ruins, and he would explore all the pottery shards that he was finding, and he noticed some patterns and just a lot of ornate, beautiful patterns on the pottery shards. So he eventually replicated the ancient pottery styles from that place. Now, that ruin near their village was called Casa Grande. There are several ruins that are known as Casa Grande. There's some up in Arizona. There's at least one major ruin in Arizona called Casa Grande. This is down in Mexico. The modern village that this family lives in is called Mata Ortiz, Mataortiz, Mata Ortiz. And so this pottery style from the Casa Grande ruin was known as Casa Grande style or known as Mata Ortiz style. And so this gentleman, Juan Quesada, Juan, when he was young, he figured out how to replicate that pottery style, and he successfully replicated what he was finding as just potsherds in the ruins, but these highly ornate um, remnants of pottery. Now, the Casa Grande culture had died out hundreds of years before. The Casa Grande culture was gone before Columbus came across the ocean. I don't know exactly how old it was, but it predates the arrival of Columbus. I should say the decline of that culture predates the arrival of Columbus. More than likely, the people who live in that area today are probably genetic descendants from the Casa Grande people, but you can't say that they are the Casa Grande people, because to be a people, that means to carry forth a culture and set of traditions and things like that. And so the people who live there now, they don't necessarily identify as being the Casa Grande people. At least to my knowledge, they don't carry forward that identity. But anyway, so Juan Quesada decided to revive the pottery tradition, and he did. Now, this is an evolution of that tradition. This is not what Casa Grande pottery looked like back in the day. So back in the day, they had lighter color surfaces, and they were painted with different pigments of many different colors, many different shades, and it was not this black on black type of design. And didn't necessarily have 3D 3D creatures put on it. I don't know if any of the other current Mata Ortiz artists do these 3D creatures the way that Rito does. Um, anyway, that's so this is part of that history where there was like a culture that was dead and gone, and the culture had long disappeared out of the Rio Grande, the Rio. I never know how to say these things. Rio Grande Valley, the Rio Grande Valley, and the culture had long since disappeared. Their knowledge, their traditions, their artwork had long since stopped, and in this one town, Mata Ortiz, it's been revived. And so there is still a tradition of creating that polychrome pottery where it has the different colors of pigment and the lighter colored base. So the black, I want to explain real quick. The black is achieved by a process called reduction. Reduction is where they take a piece of pottery, and maybe the clay is somewhat gray colored or tan colored. And normally when you would fire it and bake it, it might turn brown or orange or kind of a buff color. It depends on the mineral content in that clay. It can turn different colors. But you don't have clay that when you fire it, it just turns black. Now, that is assuming that you fire it in a way where oxygen can reach it. And the pots that are colored, that have colored patterns on them, that's exactly how they're fired. So these different pigments get applied, then they're fired with access to oxygen. So oxygen can move across the surface of the pots, and then you don't get any carbon buildup on the surface of the pot. And what you get, if your firing is successful, is a pot that shows all the colors of those pigments that you've applied. So now if you do the opposite, you make it to where oxygen cannot reach the surface of the pot. The tradition is, what usually happens, the pots are normally fired upside down in both processes. The pots are fired upside down so that you don't get ashes and cinders on the inside. But the pot is turned upside down, and it's put into a fire, and there's a fire built all around the pot. There might be a bunch of pots. There pots all in one big firing pit. But the pots are fired, and once they reach a certain temperature and they've basically turned to ceramic already, they've hardened, they're no longer clay, they're now ceramic, then some other organic material is piled on top and it suffocates the air supply to um, that kiln, that pit kiln. And a lot of times that will be maybe dried sheep manure, dried cow manure. This particular village, they tend to use cow manure. It could be sawdust, it could be straw, but whatever it is, it's laid on so thick that it absolutely suffocates all air supply to the pots. So then, as that organic matter burns, but it has no access to oxygen, it can't combust into fire. It just kind of creates a really sooty, smoky, oxygen deprived environment. And it's just carbon rich. And that carbon is driven into the ceramic of the pottery and it colors it black and it won't come off. Now, I probably could put this into a secondary fire and refire it with oxygen. I could probably burn off the carbon. But of course, who would want to? This was intentionally fired with processes that would give it the black on black. It's supposed to be this pattern. So anyway, so that's how it gets its color. So it's a very unique process that was developed. The earliest known use of that um, technique that I know of is Maria Martinez from the American Southwest in the early 1900s. She began making pottery black on black using that oxygen starvation, that reduction process. Anyway, so I'm going to show a close-up real quick. I'm going to start there. I want to really highlight, this is some of the leftover goo that I still needed to clean off from the price tag that was in the secondhand store. But look at these patterns. That is amazing. Amazing patterns. My son said that this looks like Thunderbird. Like this would be maybe a tail. Then you come up here, and this is the head with an eye, and there's a beak. I don't know if that's really what it's supposed to be, but I like that observation that maybe that's what it is. And actually, you know what? Looking at it, actually looking at it, I think that is a bird design. This would be a wing, and then when you come over here, this would be a tail. See how the tail forks out here like a swallowtail? So it could be. I really don't know if that's for sure what it is. Look at those details. Wow. And just a large blank space just to show the luster of the pot. Also look in this area right here. There's an arrowhead very craftily inserted right there. So I'm going to call the tail of the bird, whether that's what it is or not. Within the tail of the bird, he left an area of polish that forms an arrowhead. Beautiful. And then, of course, we have the detail of the rattlesnake. We'll start at the tail. There's the rattles. And then the snake just winds its way up the pot and up to the brim. And there we go. This piece, I looked it up online. I don't know if what I found was this exact piece or not. If it wasn't this exact piece, there was one very, very similar. And this is valued or estimated value of between $300 and $500. So $6 at a secondhand store. Keep your eyes out, people. That's amazing. The $300 to $500 pot. I'll just average it out and say that it's a $400 pot. I don't know if I'll resell this or not. You know, every time that you find something that you pay very little for, but it's worth a lot, you know, the thought always goes through everybody's head, wow, I could resell this and think of the profit that I could make. But this is like really special to me to have found this. I've wanted to find this exact kind of pottery for years. I've dreamed I could never afford to buy this kind of pottery on my own. So for years, I've dreamed of finding something like this just because I admire it so much. So now to have found it, that's pretty amazing. So I doubt that I will resell this. I mean, I don't want to say I never will. There's always a possibility because ultimately things are things, and they're just material possessions. But at this point, I'm thinking it might be more valuable to me to keep. And also, there was one other detail. So I showed you there's like the gunk there. You can see it's kind of a little dirty right there from the price tag that was on here. There's one other spot here. There's some gunk that I need to clean off. Don't know if that'll show up. That was a previous price tag, it looks like. And down here, there's a little square, some leftover gunk from another price tag. So I am at least the third buyer of this pot, possibly more. I have no idea how old it is, but probably, like I was saying before, probably like the last quarter of the 20th century. Anyway, just wanted to share that. I'm really excited. I thought that maybe my viewers would also really appreciate it. So thanks for watching. And you know what? I don't really like always asking for likes and subscribes and shares and things like that, but they really do help the spread of the channel. So if you liked this video, please like it because that way YouTube is going to want to show my other videos to people, show this video to other people. Um, and yeah, and feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you look at my other videos and you like the kind of content that I cover, I would love your subscription. Anyway, but I wanted to show you that pot. I'm really excited. Have a great day, everybody. Okay, Nate.